Hey guys, welcome in. It is Brad with College SportsCast. We are here for season three, our Big 12 football preview for 2024. All right, guys, welcome back. It's Brad with College SportsCast. I'm going to try to be quick here tonight. These conferences keep adding teams, John, and these previews keep getting longer and longer and longer.
They are.
I mean, these conferences, we started this 3 years ago. The Big 12 used to be 12, it went to 14, now it's 16.
Before you know it, they'll be 28, 30.
They just keep adding teams, so it gets longer and longer and longer. But we're here to do the Big 12 for you guys. You can help support us by sending stars on Facebook. Also, you can subscribe to us on Facebook as well. I do want to put that out right away. And also check out our can't miss kickoff at homefieldapparel.com. Go to Brad CS Cast. I made a post today about it. You can check out our link for that. There is a big kickoff coming up with 82 new items for schools. There's 5 new schools. There's over 300 items. They're dropped all throughout the month of August, starting August 9th. Check it out at homefieldapparel.com. And I've got it going at the bottom. All right, John. We are here to do the Big 12 and do the Big 12 preview. I'm going to get things started off. We're going to do these in alphabetical order, guys. I decided to do these. All of these previews will be in alphabetical order. That way, there's no, hey, you're showing, showing
favoritism.
Yeah. Favoritism. There you go. That's the word I was trying to think of. Favoritism towards one or towards another. We're doing these in alphabetical order. So we're going to start with Arizona. Arizona is going to be our first one. The preview here on Arizona, and we're going to try to keep these fairly quick because, like I said, we got 17 teams. But the real question with Arizona, John, was last year for real?
I think so. It's fair to question how this team will look without Jedd Fisch. He moved on to Washington. But they did return their star quarterback, Noah Fafita, and McMillan, their wide receiver. They also added a running back from the portal, Ja'Cory Crosty Merritt from New Mexico. He was outstanding for New Mexico. They not only won 7 in a row down the stretch last year, but they did it after pushing USC and Washington in early season losses. So,
well, my question to you is they went out and they got Dino Barbers. Do you think that was a strong hire? Do you think that was good for them, for Arizona?
I think it was. I think he'll help them. He's the offense coordinator, right?
Dino was the former head coach, at Syracuse.
That's right. Dino Babers, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think he'll do some good things there. I think, keeping their quarterback and their wide receiver, and then they added that transfer guy in the portal, the running back from New Mexico. I think it's going to help them be the team that everybody thought they would be. I was just concerned, when Jedd Fisch left, like how empty would the tank be and how empty would, some of these guys leave. Now they lost some guys, but they did return their star quarterback and one of their star receivers, and I think that's going to
Yeah,
play a big part.
so that was my next thing here, talking about the offense here. So they've got Fafita, I think is how you pronounce his name, as
Yeah.
the quarterback, Noah here. But they also, and I don't think a lot of people are going to know this, but they might have the best wide receiver in the nation in McMillan.
Yeah, McMillan, he's the real deal, and there's nobody's ceiling that's higher than Arizona's, in my opinion, in this conference. Now we'll get down to some of these other teams, but Arizona is a team to watch for in this conference. I wouldn't be shocked if they won it, to be honest.
All right, let's get to defense. On the defensive side of the ball here, I'm going to start with, I think this Arizona team could have one of, if not the best linebacker crew in the Big 12. 1-2 punch as far as a linebacker with Jacob Manu and Justin Flo.
Yeah.
I think that is going to be two really solid linebackers for this defense. And there's a lot to like about their secondary as well. They have some really nice pieces back are on this team in their secondary as well for the defense, John.
Yeah, Takario Davis, their cornerback, he's one of the top cornerbacks in the Big 12, and to add on from what their defense to their offense, if they could get a little bit of defense to match their offense, this Arizona team could, I wouldn't say they'll win the college football, but they could play a big part in possibly getting into that 12-team playoff this year.
Yeah, I think so. So keys to the season here, going to try to run through real quick, but my key for them is pass protection. The offensive line was terrific at times last year, but it did give up 26 sacks last year to Noah and to their starting quarterbacks. So I think Dino Babers has got to try to get cut down on some of these sacks, and I think pass protection is going to be a key to their season.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's going to come down to pass protection because they got, like I said, the top quarterback coming back. They got the top receiver coming back. And, in their defense, they had a bunch of guys that was on the Pac-12 first team. So if they just put it all together, I think this team could be a really good team that could slide in and play for a 12-team playoff in the college football playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. Top transfer in Krosky Merritt, running back. He's a senior running back. I think he's going to be a key on this team for them, for Arizona. Just to throw a name out, key game. I've got a key game for them on their schedule. My key game is at Kansas State, September the 13th. Arizona at Kansas State. It's technically not a Big 12 game. Big 12 has got some funky stuff going on this year with some of these big Pac-12 teams coming into the Big 12. And this is technically a non-conference game, even though they're conference foes this year. But I think that's going to be a big game for both schools, particularly for Arizona here. It's at Kansas State on September the 13th.
I'm interested to see. I think they play Utah. I'm not real sure. It might be later in the year. Is it the Big 12 opener?
Yeah, we can take a look at the schedule.
I think it's the 28th of September, I think.
Their schedule is this, John. They open with New Mexico, Northern Arizona, away at Kansas State. They have an open date at Utah as their fourth game, Texas Tech at home, at BYU, Colorado at home, West Virginia at home, at UCF, another open date, Houston at TCU, and they end the season at home against Arizona State. That's a look at their schedule.
What was the September 28th game?
It's at Utah, and
that's that's the game that I was kind of referring to, because I think that's going to be because I think they'll be 3-0, and I think coming into that game, that would be a big game in terms.
Yeah, I mean they play Kansas State and Utah back-to-back weeks on the road. Well, there's an open date in there, but back-to-back games. And on the road, both games, that's two absolute key games for them for this season.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we're going to move on to the over under on wins. I have this team set at 8 on the over under for wins. Where do you see this Arizona team finishing? What's your record prediction for them?
I think it's over the 8. I think they get 9. To me, the Utah game and, like you said, the Kansas State game is going to be crucial in what happens with the rest of their season, because Kansas State, we'll be talking about them a little bit later. They got a really good team coming in this year. So the Big 12 is going to be challenging. The schedule is going to be challenging since you've added all these new teams in it. So, but I got Arizona at 9 wins. I think they go over the 8 that you predicted.
That's just a betting line that I thought I'd throw in here and kind of, for each one of these. So I thought I would do that. All right, we're going to move on to Arizona State. Give me just a second. I should have clicked off of something here. There we go. All right, we're going to move on to Arizona State. And for the preview for Arizona State. All right, so, Arizona State's been in a rough situation the last couple of years. They've got a new coach now. They followed Arizona to the Big 12 from the Pac-12. Where do you see, what's your thoughts first and foremost on this Arizona State team?
The passing game has got to improve. It starts to me with the offensive line.
Is Dillingham the right fit here? Kenny Dillingham?
I think he is.
He's in his second year, I think, here.
I think you're just going to have to give him time. Arizona State, like I said, with their passing game last year, only connected on 60% or more of its passes 3 times. The team was 1-6 when not throwing for more than 205 yards. That's not going to work in the Big 12. I'm sorry. Now, they did get a quarterback from Michigan State, Sam Leavitt. And they got Aiden Childs from Oregon State. The mobility to me is there. The passing is there. They got Cam Skatebow at running back. There's a chance for this team to really surprise some folks. But it's going to take more than just a year
let's look at offense specifically. Let's look at their offense specifically. Marcus Arroyo is brought in as offensive coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
I think offensively they're going to be pretty good. The offensive line has to get better.
It does.
I mean, just absolutely, the pass protection wasn't there. The push for the ground game wasn't there. The offensive line for this Sun Devils team has to get better.
It does. And like I said, they bring in Sam Leavitt. They got Troy O'Meara at wide receiver. Douglas, Marston Douglas, he's the tight end. He's a junior. He comes back. They got one of the best running backs in the country in Cam Skatebow. He's a senior running back. He can do things with the ball in his hands. To me, they're going to be a surprise team to watch. Now, will they win 6 games? I don't know. Their schedule's pretty tough.
Well, keys to the season, for me, their passing game has to improve a lot here at Arizona State. I realize they got a great running back, but if they're going to make any noise and get close to a bowl game, they have to improve on their passing game.
See,
and with that, the passing game with a key there. So a key player for that, for me, is their quarterback, Sam Levitt.
Yeah.
He's a redshirt freshman. He's, like I said, redshirt freshman. So he's got a little learning to do. But early in the season, he's got to learn at a fast rate. And they've got to be able to all right.
Are you there?
Key game.
Oh, key game. To me, I think it's the Mississippi State game.
Not sure if we're going. All right, so a key game here. Yeah, key game for Arizona State. I have it at Texas Tech. At Texas Tech.
Texas Tech's huge.
A key game for them.
But the 3 road games, they got one of Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, and Arizona. I just don't think they can beat all 3 of those teams. Like, they're going to have to at least win one of those, and they're going to have to win the games against Wyoming, Mississippi State, and Texas State, or at least go 2-1.
Wyoming's no pushover. Mississippi State's going to be a tough one. So, I mean, this schedule isn't easy for a team that's trying to get back to a bowl game, to be quite honest with you. I mean, they get Kansas, Utah, Kansas State, Oklahoma State. These are some of the better teams in the Big 12. On top of and at Arizona at the end, plus they get a Wyoming team that's usually pretty good at football, and Mississippi State, SEC. I mean, this is a tough looking schedule, I think. Now, they were 3-9 last year. So, you know, the question that I have is, can they improve on that 3-9? I have them setting at over and under 5 wins.
Yeah, that's where I got them
on the season. Do you think, you know, what's your record prediction here for Arizona?
That's where I got them at 5.5. Like, you're going to have to win the Wyoming, like I said, Texas State, Mississippi State, and then you're going to have to win some of the 50-50 games like Arizona, the Mississippi State game, UCF, the game at Cincinnati, possibly even the Kansas game at home. So, which Kansas will be much improved. A lot of those teams are not going to be easy wins either, like even at home. Like, it's going to be tough. The Big 12 just added a bunch of new teams, and it's just going to be a really tough schedule for not just Arizona State, but everybody. And there's going to be some painful whiffs. But so I said,
you think maybe 5 wins catches them? You don't think they go bowling?
I think they got a shot. If they can get one road win out of Texas Tech and those names that I mentioned, I think they got a shot to go to a bowl.
All right.
But
we are going to move on to Baylor.
But like I said, their offensive line is going to have to improve if they're going to want to go bowling. They can't do what they did a year ago and expect to go bowling.
All right. with Baylor. So Baylor has, been a kind of an enigma. I mean, they had a bad season, then they come back to a couple of years ago and had one of their best seasons. Was like 12-1 or 12-2 or something like that. Had one of their best seasons, and then they've kind of fallen back and had not very great seasons the last 2 years. Where do you see Dave Aranda here in this Baylor team?
Whew. The offense was bad last year.
He's in year 4 or year 5.
It's year 4, I think. Everything was bad last year, from the offense to the defense. This is going to be a tough year for Aranda. He's going to have to get better play out of his offensive line.
I mean, the first question I have for you is, if he doesn't get to a bowl game this year, does he survive?
I don't think
he survives year 4.
I don't think he does. If he don't get to a bowl game, the problem is his non-conference schedule.
Yeah. And we'll get to the schedule and all that, but I just kind of wanted, just right off the bat, just ask that question. Looking at the offense, I think this offense for Baylor should actually be quite a bit more fun this year than they have had the last couple of seasons. The receiving core should be a plus for this attack.
It don't get no better than DeQuan Finn, senior quarterback. He's a special quarterback. He's got his style. He could be an instant, guy that can come in.
He's a playmaker with his feet too. I mean,
yeah, he's a dual threat quarterback.
Yeah.
And I think he threw for over 7,000 yards the last 3 years. He's going to be really good for Dave Aranda in this offense.
The offense should be a lot better here at Baylor for the Baylor Bears.
The main issue with Baylor a year ago to me was the lack of sacks and the absence of pressure, and it just killed everything in the secondary. They do get Caden Jenkins back. Reed comes back. Tevin Williams
so on
back.
The defensive side of the ball, the linebackers should be a strength.
Yeah,
but you're right. The lack of sacks,
it was really bad.
Affected this defense.
Yeah, it was a tough year ago, and it wasn't just the offense; it was the defense too. And the offense put the defense in bad situations,
and then the defense put the offense in bad situations. This team wasn't good.
It was ugly football. Like, there was some games where I would turn it on, and I'm thinking, is this really Dave Aranda? Like, the first 2021, they was really, really good. Wasn't that the year they played Ole Miss in the Sugar Bowl?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, how do you go from playing like that to this?
On defense, their linebackers should be better, which hopefully run stopping should be a plus with that. And then offensively, I think this team should be a lot better. So keys to the season for me, they've got to get better play out of their offensive line.
Yeah, it was really bad.
The O-line has to be far, far better than what they have been, not just last year, but the last 2 years.
I agree.
All right. So my key player with that is Alvin, and I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but Ebosele.
Yeah, he's offensive tackle, sophomore.
He's an offensive tackle. He's a sophomore. He's 6'6", 315 pounds. He is the type of bulk and type of player that should help be an anchor as a left tackle for this offensive line. And I think he's going to be an absolute key player because with Finn as their quarterback, if they can protect his blind side here with a guy like
mine is Finn.
Offensive tackle.
Mine's Finn because, a year ago they just didn't have, the quarterback situation real down to the point.
I have him as my top transfer.
Yeah, Finn. He comes in, he's gonna do some things with his feet and with his arm. And then we kind of go to the key game to me. I think it's Utah.
That's who I got is Utah. My key game is Utah, September the 7th. That's my key game.
Like, you should beat Tarleton State. Like, come on now. Like, I mean, who?
Hey, Dave.
You're playing a school that's not real good. You should win that game starting out the year. The Utah game is not a Big 12 game. It counts as a non-conference game. So, but it matters.
Yeah, it's one of those. I said there's some funky games, and this Utah Baylor game is one of those that's a non-conference game this year, but it's still a key game, I think, for this season, and it's right off of the bat. Basically, it's September the 7th. So I'm going to take a quick look at their schedule. They play Tarleton State.
Here's the thing, though. The game again, and everybody thinks, well, they play Air Force. That's not a cakewalk even at home.
No. Let me run through the schedule real quick. They got Tarleton State, then Utah's their second game, Air Force at home, at Colorado, BYU at home, at Iowa State, open date, at Texas Tech, Oklahoma State at home, TCU at home, open date, and they end at West Virginia, at Houston, and at home against Kansas. So that is their schedule. They do miss the Arizona schools, UCF, Kansas State. So they do miss a few of the better teams in the Big 12, I think. They get Utah, but it's not a Big 12 game, so who knows? I don't know how they're going to calculate all that. It's a little funky and a little weird to me.
Whoa, out there, yeah.
Yeah, it's a little weird to me, but I have their over-under win total set at 5.5, John. What do you think? Can they go bowling, or do they go into that?
That's where I'm at, because, they play Utah, play Air Force, which Colorado is going to be much improved at Colorado. They're going to have to win the home slate Big 12. And they're going to have to at least win two of those. One of those is not a given, and that's Oklahoma State.
What's your record? What's your record prediction for
them? Probably 5-7. The non-con to me is the problem. You play Utah, Air Force, and Colorado. Like, how much more improved are you going to be? Like, you've got to show at least
something. They do miss Arizona, Kansas State. They miss a few. So they miss a few in the Big 12. But all right, we're going to move on to BYU. The show is going to wind up being 3 hours. All right, so BYU. Talk about them real quick. We got the preview here on BYU. All right, so for me, passing game. That's what BYU has always been known for. They struggled last year in the passing game. Mm-hmm. They had Slovis last year come in, and I thought they struggled in the passing game last year. Where do you see BYU? Was it just stepping into the Big 12 and stepping into the Power Conference for the first time? Do you think that's what it was?
I think it was, and even the ground game didn't do good. They had L.J. Martin. He returns. Um, you know, the Big 12 and these other conferences are going to get tougher and tougher as they go, and you're going to have to adjust and feel your way in. And I think that's what really happened last year. Like, and Caden Slovis he was not healthy. I don't, all year long. Like, he was just getting beat to death. The offense was getting beat to death.
So
There was
when you
just
look at it as a whole, John, their quarterback play wasn't great. Their wide receiver play wasn't great. Their running backs wasn't great. So the offense really struggled last
they
year.
did, and
And they
that's
need to get going.
BYU's blueprint, like their offense, like the way they
Right.
move the ball, the way they run the ball, like it just was not BYU standards football last year.
On defense, there's some experience coming back.
There is. I'll say this: Ben Bywater probably he might be one of the best linebackers in the Big 12, which he's coming off an injury right now that cut his season short a year ago, but he's good. They got Jack Kelly coming in from Weber State.
They do.
I think they're going to have to stay healthy. The secondary was they was missing some guys last year. So overall, as a whole team, the offense and defense is going to have to figure things out and be better than they was a year ago.
I agree 100%. All right, keys to the season. What do you have as a key? Besides staying healthy, I think winning the turnover battle is going to be key for them.
Yeah, I do.
They were 0-6 when they turned it over more than their opponents last year.
Yeah, they made a lot of mistakes. And the quarterback play wasn't real good at times. It was just a whole, failure on everybody. And I think this year, there's a chance to really do some good things, especially with the schedule that they got and the quarterback they got coming back. Jerry Bohannon.
That's who I have as key player is their quarterback. With Bohannon, Gary Bohannon as their senior quarterback. That's who I have as one of their key as their key player. And Jack Kelly that you mentioned earlier from Weber State, I have him as the top transfer.
Yeah, he's nails. When I look, down the thing at their schedule's winnable to win 7 games. Like you go down the line, they play Southern Illinois.
Yeah, I mean, we'll take a look, but first I want to talk about a key game. I have the Kansas State game at home September 21st as their key
game. I think it's at Baylor the week at, because both of these teams are going to be improved, 2 of them, most improved. And I think that game can tell which team is going to be better improved in the Big 12. And I think they win the Kansas State game, it being at Provo. Now,
and that's where BYU's always had an advantage. Is it's difficult to play in Provo, the altitude and everything else that they have there. But last year, you didn't really see that a whole lot. So let's take a look at their schedule. They start out with Southern Illinois. They go at SMU, at Wyoming. So they have 2 away games here. Then they play Kansas State at home, at Baylor, open date, Arizona at home, Oklahoma State at home, at UCF. That's a tough stretch. Open date. Then they come back and play at Utah. Then they play Kansas at home, at Arizona State, and finish up with Houston. I mean, they have a 4 or 5 game stretch in that schedule that is going to be as tough as anybody in the Big 12.
It is, and I still think there's a great chance for them to get to 6-7 wins. But I feel like that game in Laramie is going to be a big game too in Wyoming
My
because
over and under for them for the season is at 6 wins. Where do you think? You said they have a chance for 7, so I have them. They're over under at 6. What do you think?
I
Record
got them.
prediction.
I got them at 7.
Okay, 7-5.
I think they'll go 7-5 because there's a couple of games there that can swing in their favor in the early part of the schedule.
That's fair. All right. Well, we are moving on to the next one. Our next team that we're going to talk about is another second-year Big 12 team, and that is Cincinnati. So Cincinnati, they had a great run with Luke Fickell. They got into the Big 12, and then last year they hit the Big 12 without Luke Fickell, and the wagon wheels kind of fell off. Do you think in year 2 are they any better off? Can they make any noise at all here in the Big 12?
Man, you got to do better than they was 85th in scoring offense. They was in points per drive. They was 108th defensively. Like they sunk. Like
they
it
were
was
bad. I mean, they hit the Big 12.
It was absolutely terrible.
Now,
like,
to be fair, they lost Luke Fickell. They lost a lot of transfers when he left and everything. So, I mean, to be fair, Cincinnati had their program where they thought they needed it to compete, and then Fickell took off to Wisconsin, and so then you're kind of left with a lot of holes to fill, and I think that's what happened to Cincinnati last year because let's just be honest, they were bad. Offense, on the offense, John, do you think the line can be a plus here? Because I kind of do. I think their offensive line can be a plus, and their new likely starting quarterback in Brendan Sorsby, he can move. He's athletic. He can move with the ball.
And they bring back Corey Kiner. They got Evan Pryor from Ohio State. He showed some flashes, but he's pretty much, on the injury list in 2023. But they do bring their whole offensive line back, which is going to be a plus.
They do.
I think
that has a chance to be a big bonus for them for this year is to have that continuity with their offensive line and a good running back and a quarterback that's mobile.
Well, the biggest thing with Cincinnati that concerns me down the road is they have their depth's going to be kind of shot if they get some injuries because their depth's not really great.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Cincinnati.
So looking at the defensive side of the ball, what do you think? Where do they go? Because they wasn't good there either. I mean, they were pretty bad on the defensive side of the ball. They did look to the portal a lot to fix things. So they do have quite a bit of players coming in from the portal to try to help them from all around the country. To be honest with you, Virginia Tech, Louisville, New Mexico State. I mean, they got a bunch of them.
I think 4 of the 5 starters in the secondary are transfers, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they got a bunch of transfers that are coming in to try to help fix things.
Well, and there's a mix of veteran experience and youth throughout all this. Like Jared Bartlett, he comes in from West Virginia. He gives the linebacking crew some experience, but if the defense is no better than the offense, I just don't see how the Cincinnati team can be.
A key to the season here is you cannot turn the ball over at the rate that they did last year. Can't have those kind of turnovers in key games. And that's for me, a team that's behind like they are, you can't give them extra possessions and that kind of stuff at the rate that they did last year.
And there's a realistic chance that Cincinnati could be 3-0, 4-0 start the year. They play Towson, Pitt, Houston, Arizona State, Colorado, and Miami. They should in those games compete with some of those teams. But that's a but one slip up, they could go from 3-1 to 2-2, 2-3. Like,
right. My key player for them is defensive end Darian Varner. He's a senior. That's my key player for them for the season.
I think mine's Connor, the running back. I think he's a big.
And the top transfer is Brendan Sorsby, the quarterback that I was talking about. I think that's two of the absolute key players for them. And then I'm going to take a look here at the key game. For me, I've got a key game for them at home against Houston, September 21st. And the reason why this is big, in my opinion, is that both of these teams come in from the AAC, Houston and Cincinnati.
Yeah,
they were both at the end when they were a group of 5 team in the AAC. They were both powerhouses in the group of 5.
Yeah,
they both took a huge back step last year. And for me, with this game being at home, they absolutely cannot let Houston have an upper leg on them in this game to start just right off the bat. They have to win this game at home. The Bearcats do.
They do. They can't afford to lose this game. Like, to me, I feel like Satterfield is kind of on the fence here, because if his season does not go the way it should,
year 2.
I mean, he didn't last long at Louisville. Like, he jumped the gun at Louisville, and they didn't really have a great year. But to be fair, he jumped and went to Cincinnati. But
yeah, I'm just saying. So they start the year off with Townsend. Then they play Pitt at home, which actually should be a pretty good matchup. Then they play at Miami. Then they go home Houston, at Texas Tech, open date, at UCF, Arizona State at home, at Colorado, open date, at home against West Virginia, at Iowa State, at Kansas State, and they finish at home with TCU. That's their schedule. So with that said, over under 5 wins. Does Satterfield get them to a bowl game?
I think there's 6 wins on that schedule, but they're going to have to win those like the ones I said early, those 4 early games. They're going to have to win those, because if they don't, they're not going to make a bowl game.
All right. We are going to go on to the next team. The next team we're going to talk about is everybody's favorite to talk about. We're going with the Colorado Buffaloes, the home of Deion Sanders.
Coach Prime.
Coach Prime. Prime time. Prime time. Prime time. All right. I had to say it at least once. It's my favorite. Prime time. All right. All right. So they started off with a bang. 3-1, got ranked. And then they fell off a cliff.
The wheels fell off.
No, it was more than the wheels fell off. They fell off a cliff. Now, where they came from, they were 1-11 the year before. So they won 4 ball games last year.
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of things, he improved them. They won 4 ball games. He's in year 2. He has a few really, really good pieces, including 2 of his sons. You know, when you look at the offense, where do you think this offense will wind up? And my thing is this, John, the offensive line
Yeah,
has to get better.
it was bad last year. Here's the thing,
Shadir just run for his life, basically.
Shadir Sanders is going to do his thing. Travis Hunter is going to do his thing. The biggest issue with me is you put a bunch of these egos together in one room, it causes a lot of problems and a lot of issues. And I think that was what happened in year 1. Like, there was a lot of things that happened on the field, off the field. You know, the chain wearing game where he showed his chain, Travis Hunter getting into it on the field with other team, like the stomping of the was it the Stanford logo? Was it Stanford?
Yeah.
I think it was.
Yeah, I think it was.
I mean, there was just so much crap going on.
But look, we're talking about prime time. We're talking about Deion Sanders here. That stuff has always been around him everywhere he's been in football. I got a question for you, for a real question here, talking about a preview for Colorado. Does the hiring of Pat Shurmur as the offensive coordinator, does that make their offense a little bit more conventional?
I think it does. I think it brings a lot of, hope to Colorado and gives him a little bit of edge. And they're going to have some depth. Their running back room's going to be really filled up. And
Shadir Sanders he has the talent to possibly be a number 1 pick. Would you agree with that?
I do. I think this team has an opportunity to do some special things, but they're going to have to be better offensively than they was a year ago. Especially offense, because Shadir Sanders.
The offensive line. I mean, you just can't run for your life. But
like Shadir Sanders was having to win games, shootouts basically to keep his team in the game.
And Travis Hunter, is he really going to play basically every snap, offense and defense? I mean, they did pick up Will Shepherd as a in the transfer portal.
Yeah, from Vanderbilt. Yeah,
from Vanderbilt. He's a talented wide receiver.
He is.
So you put him in with what they already had. I mean, like, their offense should be potent. Now, their defense had a rough year. Their defense, let's be honest, their defense had an absolute rough year.
They couldn't stop a cold, man. There was a few games here and there where they look decent, but there was a few games, man. I think it was what was the game that was it Stanford? Where Stanford come back and
down like 46-7 at halftime or something. I don't know, something crazy.
And they come back and beat Carter. Like, it was.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, how can a defense be this bad to let this kind of
evaporate? It was insane, to be quite honest with you.
Well, and they do add a few more extra guys this year. Nakia Hill-Green.
Their whole team, they brought in 42 transfers.
BJ Green.
42.
They do get BJ Green from Arizona State. He was one of the Arizona State guys that left to go to Colorado. He's a big major addition. He's an NFL guy to me. I think he's going to be in one of those top 40. He's really his work ethic's really good. The way he attacks the game is good.
So my key to the season here.
Well, then they had Travis Hunter, which is going to be a plus on the defense.
My key to the season, more than anything else, is you got to keep Shadir Sanders from getting blasted.
You do. Play. I mean, you simply do. You can't continue to let him get beat to death and just knocked around in the backfield like it. There comes a point where you just gotta.
So with that offensive tackle Jordan Seaton,
offensive tackle,
the offensive tackle Jordan Seaton, I think is going to be an absolute key player here on this offensive line. He is 6'5", 285 pounds. He's young. He was a star prospect, but he has to step up and play right away.
He does. I agree. He's got to figure it out. And they don't have many carryover players from a year ago.
The transfer, I have Will Shepard from Vanderbilt wide receiver as their top one. That's who I have as far as the transfers. My key game, and people are going to say I'm crazy, but I think it's the very first game of the season against North Dakota State. And North Dakota State is an FCS team, and people think I'm going to be crazy here.
They're really good.
But they are really, really good. They made the Final Four last year. They've won national titles. They are predicted to be in the top 2 or 3 this year of the FCS. They have a steady program and have knocked off FBS teams in the last 6, 8, 10 years.
That's pretty impressive.
I'm telling you, it's no cakewalk to start the season here for Deion against the North Dakota State team here. I mean, and it's in Boulder, but it's not going to be a cakewalk.
It's not.
All right. So looking at their schedule real quick, of course, they have North Dakota State. At Nebraska is game number 2, at Colorado State. Then they come home to Baylor, at UCF, open date. Then they get Kansas State, at Arizona. Then they play Cincinnati at home, open date, at Texas Tech, Utah at home, at Kansas, and Oklahoma State at home. So they don't miss any of the big teams. And I think that schedule doesn't bode real well for them. Of course, I told you guys that they were 4-8 last year. I've got their over-under sitting at 5.5. So if they're under, they don't go bowling. If they go over, they are bowling. Does Deion take the next step and get them to a bowl game?
I think he does. I think he's got one of the top quarterbacks in Shadir Sanders. And I think, with Travis Hunter, they should be able to push for a bowl in 24. The main thing that's really helped Colorado, and I'll say this, is they added 10 offensive linemen through the portal. That was their biggest weakness. Like, I felt like that was their biggest.
That's an insane number.
That's pretty insane. And they allowed 56 sacks a year ago, that's pretty out of control.
26 on another team we talked about earlier, I was talking about is bad. 56 is out of this world bad.
Yeah, it's pretty in Pretty gross,
I
to
mean,
be honest.
it's crazy bad. All right, we are going to go on to Houston. Houston is our next team that we're going to cover. Houston, like I said earlier, with Cincinnati, moved out of the AAC. This is their second year. They were in that trajectory with Cincinnati, where they were at the top and proved that they were ready for the Big 12 or ready for Power 5, Power 4 school conference. And then they got there last year. So, you know, where do you see this Houston team?
Willie Fritz is going to have one of the hardest jobs this year, I think, getting this team to a bowl game. I know they bring back Donovan Smith. They brought back some skill players, but they only bring one starter back along the offensive line, and I think that's where they're going to really be hurting, to be honest. I think two returning starters on defense.
The offensive line is under a complete overhaul. That is true, but they should have one of the better quarterbacks in the Big 12.
Donovan Smith. Donovan Smith's really good. The biggest question mark for me with the Cougars is they allowed 31 points a year ago. That ain't going to win you many games in the Big 12, which there's going to be a big transition on the defensive side and the offensive side. So, Sheil Wood, the new defensive coordinator, he's only got two returning starters on the defense from a year ago. So, on both sides of the ball, it's going to be a challenge.
Again, we're talking about the portal. So they picked up a lot of people from the portal.
They did.
They do have some linebackers that could be disruptive on this team, I believe, on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, Jamal Morris is a good place to start on the linebacker crew for them.
Now they did get Malik Carr from Michigan State, the tight end. So,
yeah,
I think he'll be a big plus for their offense with Donovan Smith. Parker Jenkins is there. Joseph Manjack will be there. So they're going to have some pieces to work with. I just think it's just going to take a lot for them to get to a bowl.
My key, you're talking about pieces to work with and bringing these guys in. It's gelling enough to be able to have some impact plays, and that's on offense and defense. They need impact plays with basically a bunch of new guys.
Yeah, a bunch of transfers, yeah.
A bunch of transfers and a bunch of new guys. I mean, that's one of my keys to the season for them. You know, a key player, I've got Xavier Stillman.
I still think mine's Donovan Smith. Like, he's going to have to be the guy this year if they're going to get to a bowl game.
Malik Carr, you talked about him, the tight end transfer. So I think he is one of the top transfers on this team. Put him with Donovan Smith. I think you might have something there. So, you know, again, just like I was talking about with Cincinnati, my key game is at Cincinnati for this Houston.
Yeah, that's a pretty huge game this early in the year. Like, it's you can't lose that.
It's going to set the stage for which one is higher up the ranking in the Big 12.
Yeah, it's a crucial game.
So that's what I have as their, as a key game for the season. Is the Cincinnati game. You take a look at the schedule real quick. They start off with UNLV at home. Won't be a cakewalk. This UNLV team is being ranked pretty high in the Mountain West. At Oklahoma. So even though Oklahoma is leaving the Big 12, Houston doesn't avoid them. They play at Oklahoma. Then they come back and play Rice at Cincinnati, Iowa State at home, at TCU, open date at Kansas, Utah at home, Kansas State at home, open date at Arizona, Baylor at home, and they end the season in Provo playing BYU. That's a look at their schedule and their over under wins. I have them set at 5.5, just like I did with Cincinnati. Can he get them to a bowl game in his first season? He's a good coach.
I think it's going to be tough.
He is a good coach, but it's going to be tough.
It's going to be. I say give me 6. I think they'll get 6.
All right, so you got them going 6-6.
Yeah, got them 6-6. Yeah.
All right. Well, then we're going to move on to Iowa State. And I'm going to start out with Iowa State, man. Let's talk about the job that Matt Campbell has done at Iowa State. Iowa State, for many years, was a losing football program before Matt Campbell got there. 6 of the last 7 years, they have at least they have a winning season in 6 of the last 7 years under Matt Campbell.
And I'll say this, they've consistently, every single year, they've ranked near the top of the Big 12 on defense under John Heacock. And they bring back 9 starters defensively.
Yeah.
They bring back their All-American, Jeremiah Cooper. They're going to be good.
But here's what I want to talk about. So last year, this team was a little wacky. And if you want to know what wacky means, so this team lost to Ohio.
Yeah, it was
okay.
It was weird.
Then they beat Oklahoma State.
Yeah, it was
okay. They went 4-0 on the road. Okay. And then they went 0-2 at home.
Yeah, they started out 2-3, I think, and they finished like 5-3 down the stretch. And they lost 3 of those by like 10 points or less, I think.
And they had a great defense, but they gave up 36 points to Memphis in the bowl game and lost.
Yeah, the bowl game was a disaster. Like I watched most of that, and it was just a really bad night.
Overall, this team was up and down and all over the place and good on the road and not good at home and losing to Ohio and beating Oklahoma State and great defense, but played terrible in the bowl game. I mean, they were just kind of all over the place. But all in all, they had another winning season.
Well, and 2, they bring back Rocco Beck, the quarterback. They bring back Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel. They're 2 of the best in the Big 12.
It took a little while on the offense, but about midway through the season, the offense decided to join the party. Last year for Iowa State, the offensive line should be a lot stronger, I think. They have 4 starters back on the offensive line. So that should be a big plus for them. And here's something a little even more wacky. They still play with a fullback.
Yeah. Ain't many does that anymore.
I don't know if y'all heard me, but they play with a fullback. Did y'all hear that? I'm just saying.
There's not many teams that do that anymore.
They have a quarterback, Rocco Beck. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. That I think is going to be a fun quarterback to watch. I believe. I mean, he's not going to be Sanders or nothing, but I think he's going to be a solid quarterback for them.
He
For the
threw
Cyclones.
for over 3,000 yards.
Yeah,
I mean that's pretty good. 23 touchdowns.
and they got Jaden Higgins as a wide receiver on the outside. You know,
Yeah,
I think offensively they're going to be a pretty fun team. And like I said, they started out kind of slow last year, but the offense decided to join the party about halfway through the season.
yeah, it was, and then they end the season kind of like on a smash. Like they just never, you know, that bowl game was just odd to start with. Like it was just, I don't know what happened. Like,
Okay, so Texas led the Big 12 in defense last year. Texas is now gone to the SEC. Okay, guess who was number 2 overall?
Iowa State.
It was Iowa State. Had the second best overall defense in the Big 12. And like John said, they returned 9 starters off of this thing. They have what should be one of the strongest lines in the Big 12, defensive lines, and they have a solid linebacker core as well coming back. So on the defensive side of the ball, you know, they lost a star in the secondary. Tampa's gone. They lost him, but they still have several players back and have some experience in the secondary as well.
They do. Should be interesting to see where Iowa State falls into here.
Yeah, I mean, this is a team that could be sneaky, and they could be in that mix of 3 or 4 teams that have a shot. Or this could be a team that's kind of in the mid-pack and is like 7 or 8.
Yeah, it just varies from game to game. It just depends on how they they don't have another,
like for the whole season. I mean, they could be like 7 or 8 in the order, or this team actually could be sneaky good and be a dark horse team in the pack or in the Big 12 here, I think. So keys to the season for me is turnovers. You got to get turnovers instead of giving them away.
You do.
So they were 5-0 in the regular season when they did not turn the ball over last year. When they did turn the ball over, they were 2-5.
Which is not good at all.
All right. Now, people are going to think I'm completely crazy here, but my key player for them, because they played, is a kicker, actually, Carter Davis. I know, a little strange, but like the Ohio game last year, they lost because they didn't have the kicking. And that is a main reason they can't lose a game like the Ohio game last year, this year, if they want to climb that ladder without Texas and Oklahoma being in the Big 12 for the very first time. So I think a game like that, a kicker is going to be a key player. Top transfer, I've got Jalen Travis. 6'7", 315 pounds. Defensive tackle. I mean, that could be huge. Bringing in a guy like that. Key game. I got one late in the season here for them.
I think the key game for me is Iowa. Like, you know, I know that it's a rivalry game, but
yeah, it is.
Which Iowa State didn't start out great a year ago. They started out 2-3,
but they ended pretty good.
They ended good, but I think for this year they need to start out a little bit quicker than they did a year ago, and I think starting out quick on that Iowa game and winning that rivalry game will help matters.
I've got at Kansas. That's what I've got. taking a look at their schedule. So they play North Dakota at Iowa. Then they come back and play home Arkansas State, at Houston, Baylor at home, at West Virginia, UCF at home, open date, Texas Tech at home, at Kansas, Cincinnati at home, at Utah, and Kansas State. I have their over and under, John, set at 7.
I think it's 8. Like, if you look at the first 6 games, like, there's a good chance beyond the Iowa game possibly that they could win. They could be 6-1, 5-1, like, because some of those games are very winnable. Now, the back end, they might have a little difficulty, but the front end it's winnable.
So you think they can go 8-4?
I do. I think they got a shot to
I
go
think
8.
this team could be sneaky good. I really do.
I do as
I
well.
think they have that potential to be sneaky good here in the Big 12. So our next one is Kansas. We're going to get to Kansas here for you guys. Kansas, the job that their coach has done, John. I mean, but here's what I want to say. And I know a lot has went into, talking about the job that he's done. But last year was the first winning season since 2009 for Kansas.
It was.
They went 9-4. I'm not going to sit here and diminish their season, but it was the first time they've had a winning season since 2009.
Oh, and Bean came in and he done a really good job for Jalen Daniels. I said that right, didn't I? Jalen Daniels?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking about Jaden Daniels from LSU, but Jalen Daniels.
I mixed it up.
I get them confused. But the biggest concern with Kansas this year is, him staying healthy. Like, he's not.
And to be honest with you, John, part of that big concern is they're basically starting over with an offensive line.
They are. Now their defense has made big strides the last 3 years. It's been a lot better, but it's still not where it needs to be.
You got Daniels, and you got a good receiving core here on the offense as well. So they are going to have a great offense. Defense, John, I mean, the secondary last year was second best in the Big 12 in yards allowed.
Yeah, that's major improvement for Kansas. Like, you would have never heard in the last 5 or 6 years that a Kansas team would have that kind of improvement.
They were second in the Big 12 in yards allowed. Their secondary was. Now, the front seven has experience, and they have a pretty big linebacking core coming in. So, their defense should be better. Don't you think?
I do. And to me, though, I think the biggest thing for Kansas is getting to that next step, Big 12 championship. And I even told you this, what was it, a week ago. I said I wouldn't be shocked if Kansas won this conference. And
I think the key for them to do that, they have to be better in the red zone.
They do. I agree. And I think quarterback play has to be, like I said with Jalen Daniels, what's his health? What's he going to be like? How is it going to affect, their season? Because I think their defense is going to be really good. They got a lot of great transfers. And
I'm talking about defense here, John. Do you realize they gave up 70% touchdowns in the red zone?
Yeah, it was brutal last year.
Like, that's not good.
Mm-mm.
Mm-mm. Shane Baumgartner is their senior center. I think he's going to be a key player for them. That's who I have. Their offensive line is basically retooling, and their center has got to kind of set the stage for them to protect Daniels because he does get hurt a lot. They did bring in an edge guy and buy Joby or Job. I'm not sure. He's an edge guy as in the transfer portal from Michigan State.
I think it's the defense. Their secondary. They have Kobe Bryant. I know, not Kobe Bryant, but it's Kobe Bryant.
Yeah.
And Romelo Dotson. I think, if they're going to be big time players in the Big 12 championship and at least have a shot to win, I think they got to have some good, consistent defensive play, especially in the red zone from a year ago.
All right. A key game for me is at Kansas State.
That's mine. That's what I have.
That's October 26th at Kansas State. I think that is an absolute key game for them. Now, when I am talking about their schedule, I do want to mention here that Kansas is renovating their home football field. They get 0 games at their true home this year. They are playing, I think it's like 2 or 3 hours away.
Yeah,
is where they're playing their home games. It's in Kansas City, I think. Pretty sure it's in Kansas City, I think. Is where they're playing their home games. So when you look at their schedule, they start off at home, Lindenwood, at Illinois, UNLV at home, at West Virginia, TCU at home, at Arizona State, open date, Houston at home, at Kansas State, open date, Iowa State at home, at BYU, Colorado at home, and they finished the year at Baylor. So I don't know if you had time to look that up.
I think they got a favorable schedule.
They do, they don't get Oklahoma State. They don't play UCF. They don't play Utah. So they miss a few. Kansas. I just wonder what not playing at home will do. I think that's a kind of a key factor here is, for them to not be playing at home. I was trying to look at my. Okay, so over under, I'm going to set them at 8. Do you think they can go over or under 8 wins?
I think it's 9.
And if they get 9-3, I think that'll push to be towards the top of the Big 12 here. I think.
Yeah, great chance.
Yeah. All right. So from Kansas, we're going to go to their rival, the Kansas State Wildcats here. Kansas State, I'm going to ask you this question. And of the next 2 teams, I'm going to ask you the same question. Who's the new star of the Big 12?
Avery Johnson.
You got Texas and Oklahoma that's left. Can Kansas State fill that spot?
I think they can. Avery Johnson, the times that he was in there last year, since Will Howard has left for Ohio State, co-coordinators and Connor Riley and Matt Wells are going to try to work his game in. They got DJ Giddens and Dylan Edwards in the backfield. They got a deep backfield on the ground. So I think they got to get Avery Johnson together and figure him out and get this team together. And I think this team could be one of the sleepers to go to the big game, the college football playoff.
So the receiving core needs some new players to step up, I think.
They do. And they have a few questions on defense because they only bring back 7 starters, which
I think on defense, Moore is probably the team's best linebacker.
Austin Moore.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think,
I think he's one of the top in the Big 12.
yeah, they have to find a way for a bit more pass rush. The defense was solid, but I still think they need a bit more pass rush, I think, on this Kansas State team. And the secondary should actually be pretty dominant
They
on the
should.
defense.
And they got a favorable slate, too, schedule. And they
So
got a very and they're
keys to
solid.
the
They got a
season,
solid roster. So
keys to the season, I think they got to be better on special teams.
I do. I think they do.
They were okay to bad last year on special teams, and I think they have got to be better on special teams. So
I think they're going to miss Cooper Beebe on the offensive line. I think he was one of their best guys that on that offensive line, in which they're breaking in 3 new starters. If they can get those offensive lines straightened out, I think this offense has a really great chance at being great with Avery Johnson running the show.
top transfer, Dylan Edwards, running back Dylan Edwards, I think is one of the top transfers here.
Yeah.
A key game. I've got Oklahoma State, September 28th.
It's pretty huge.
Yeah. I've got Oklahoma State, and this game is at home for them. And outside of this Oklahoma State game, they have a manageable Big 12 schedule.
They do.
You go and you look at their schedule. They play UT Martin at home, at Tulane, Arizona at home, at BYU, Oklahoma State at home. The Arizona game is one of those funky non-conference games, by the way.
Yep.
At Colorado, at West Virginia, Kansas at home, at Houston, open date, at Arizona State at home, Cincinnati at home, and at Iowa State to end the season.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's favorable to win 8 or 9 games there.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I have their over/under setting at 8.5.
Give me 9. I think they'll get 9.
Okay. So you had Kansas at 9, them at 9. All right.
I think the year of the Kansases, I think they'll be ready to show a show this year.
All right, we're going to OK State. Again, Oklahoma State. Who can be the anchor of the Big 12? Could that be Oklahoma State?
Well, I mean, they bring back 20 starters. Ollie Gordon returns. Let's just say he's the best running back in college football. I
think it's likely that he can be the top running back in college football.
I mean, unless your name's Judkins or Donovan Edwards. I mean,
yeah, it's likely that Ollie Gordon could be the top running back in college football.
Well, and it's not so much that their offensive line is probably in the top 10 as well. Like they're stacked. And they bring back Brennan Presley. They bring back Rashad Owens. Now I will say this is a big thing.
Talking about offense here real quick, John. They were 8th in total yards, 9th in rushing, and 8th in scoring in the Big 12 last year. But somehow it worked. So, I mean, they were kind of in the mid to low tier. I mean, 8th, 9th, but somehow it worked.
Well, my biggest concern, though, is Alan Bowman. Like, he's going to have to cut his interceptions out. Like, he's He threw a lot of picks.
He's my key player for this team because everything else, I mean, you look at this team, to be quite honest with you, they got 20 returning players like John talked about. They did struggle against the run a little bit last year. But outside of that, the linebackers were fantastic. I think they have two probably first team Big 12 linebackers on this team.
The biggest issue a year ago.
The secondary returned some strong players. So the defense is going to be there. The running game's going to be there. And for me, that's going to be the key, is to keep that running game going with that offensive line.
Well, and two,
you've got to feed Ollie Gordon.
You do. But my key to the season is they really didn't generate much of a pass rush last year. And they're going to have to be better at that defensively. They gave up, I think, 28 points a game. But when you have Ollie Gordon and you got the weapons that you do, you can hang in any game. And I think Oklahoma State did that.
My key player here is Alan Bowman. That's my key player. I mean, he was a backup at Michigan. You know, he was at Texas Tech. I mean, this kid, I don't even know now exactly how long he really has been in college. I lost track. It's either going to be year 7 or year 8. And I'm not making that up. Like, for real, this kid has been in college. I mean, you got guys that I'm not so sure was in high school. I mean, seriously, this kid's been in college for absolute ever. So here's my key stat for Bowman. When he hit 60% accuracy, they were 8-0 last year. He has some accuracy issues, and he's got to get that fixed.
Yeah, and he needs to cut, like I said, he needs to cut the interceptions down.
Yeah. So to go along with what you were talking about in getting sacks, they did bring in the top transfer is an edge guy. He was huge in Division II, okay? He had 14 sacks, 22 and a half tackles for loss. So, he's a guy that could make a difference here on the outside, kind of rushing the passer to kind of go.
I will say that they got a really good linebacker. They got a really good linebacking crew. Colin Oliver, and they got Nick Martin. I think
they could be all Big 12 guys, both of them.
Both of them, yeah.
First team. So, game, just like we talked about in the last one with Kansas State, this one is Oklahoma State, Kansas State, September 28th. I still have that as my key game. It's a key game for both teams here. Whoever wins is going to have a leg up in the Big 12. That's what I think.
Yeah, I think whoever wins that game is going to be on the top.
They're going to have a little bit of a leg up here in the Big 12. So their schedule, they play South Dakota State, which is not a slouch team out of the FCS. Then they play at home against Arkansas, at Tulsa, home against Utah, which again is not – I don't think that one is wait a minute. Maybe that one is a Big 12 game. That might be the first one. So home Utah, at Kansas State, home West Virginia, open date at BYU, at Baylor, home Arizona State.